The electromagnetic grapple hummed with barely contained energy, its tungsten carbide fingers flexing against the void of space. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the debris field through her reinforced helmet visor, each fragment telling a silent story of humanity's brutal first century of interplanetary expansion. Jupiter loomed in the background, a massive amber-swirled sentinel watching over the graveyard of forgotten missions. "Control, we're approaching Sector 7 Delta." Elena's voice crackled through the communication system. Her team of 6 salvage specialists moved with the practiced precision of veterans who had spent more years in spacesuits than on solid ground. The Earth Reclamation Corporation didn't hire rookies for missions like this. Too expensive, too dangerous. Miguel Santos, the team's senior structural analyst, rotated slowly, his suit's mini thrusters compensating for the microgravitational fluctuations. "I'm picking up some unusual energy signatures," he reported, his voice calm despite the potential discovery. Unusual was a dangerous word in deep space salvage. It could mean anything from a radiation pocket to a dormant weapons system. The debris field stretched for kilometers, a graveyard of humanity's earliest deep space conflicts. Remnants of the resource wars drifted silently. Shattered hull fragments, disconnected drive sections, the occasional skeletal remains of spacecraft that had once represented humanity's most advanced technologies. Most salvage teams would have passed this sector by, considering it picked clean decades ago. But Elena Rodriguez wasn't most salvage commanders. Her reputation in the salvage community was legendary. She had a knack for finding value where others saw only destruction. This particular mission was supposed to be routine: clear out potentially hazardous materials, recover any valuable components, prepare the sector for eventual industrial reclamation. "Zoom in on these molecular patterns," Miguel called out, highlighting a section of a fragmented hull on the team's shared display. The fragment was unlike anything they had seen before. A complex lattice of materials that seemed to shimmer between solid and liquid states, defying standard material science. Kendra Williams, the team's cinematerial specialist, leaned closer to her scanning interface. Her breath caught in her throat. "That's not standard human or known alien engineering," she muttered, fingers dancing across holographic controls. "The molecular structure is adaptive, almost like it's breathing." Elena studied the fragment carefully. Decades of salvage work had taught her that space held more mysteries than most humans could comprehend. What looked like random debris often held stories of technological miracles, or potential weapons that could reshape interstellar politics. "Secure that fragment," she commanded. "Prepare for careful extraction." The operation was delicate. Standard extraction methods could destroy the complex molecular structure they had discovered. Miguel and Kendra worked in tandem, using specialized quantum resonance cutters that could isolate the fragment without disrupting its internal matrix. As they worked, the fragment began to change. Subtle shifts in its coloration, minute reorganizations of its molecular structure that would have been invisible to less specialized equipment. Something about the fragment was responding to their presence, to their technology. "Captain," Miguel's voice held a note of excitement, rarely heard in deep space salvage operations. "I think this is more than just a fragment. It's like a piece of something much larger." Elena knew that look. It was the same expression she had seen when her team discovered the remnants of the first deep space exploration vessels, artifacts that had rewritten human understanding of technological development. This felt different. This felt important. The fragment continued to shift, its surface developing complex patterns that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. It was as if the piece of technology was alive, waiting, watching. Little did they know that this single fragment would become the foundation of humanity's most extraordinary spacecraft. Little did they know that the ghosts of this orbital graveyard were about to awaken, bringing with them a technological revolution that would change the course of human history forever. As the extraction began, something in the fragment seemed to respond. A faint pulse, a whisper of potential. the first breath of what would become the Star Dread. The laboratory complex orbited Earth in a carefully maintained geosynchronous position, a marvel of international cooperation that stood as a testament to humanity's most ambitious scientific endeavors. Jack Mitchell stood before the recovered fragment, his fingers hovering just millimeters from its surface. The material seemed to shimmer with an inner life, defying every known principle of material science. "It's not just a piece of technology," Jack muttered to himself. "It's something else entirely." The fragment had been transported from the Jupiter orbital graveyard under maximum security protocols. Government agencies, corporate research divisions, and independent scientific teams had all submitted proposals to study the mysterious artifact. But the Earth Reclamation Corporation had won the contract, primarily because of Jack's reputation for solving impossible technological challenges. His team was a carefully curated group of the most brilliant minds from around the globe. Dr. Rosario Valdez, a quantum materials expert, adjusted her holographic interface, capturing microscopic changes in the fragment's molecular structure. Beside her, Hiroshi Nakamura manipulated complex diagnostic tools, his movements precise and calculated. "The molecular lattice is responding to our scanning frequencies," Rosario announced, her voice a mix of excitement and scientific caution. "It's not just reflecting our probes, it's actively engaging with them." Jack understood what that meant. Most technological artifacts were passive. They could be studied, analyzed, reverse engineered. This was different. This fragment seemed to be studying them as much as they were studying it. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine thermal scan, the fragment suddenly projected a three-dimensional holographic map, not of its own internal structure, but of something far more complex. Star systems, technological schematics, and what appeared to be advanced propulsion designs flickered into existence, rotating slowly above their examination table. "My God," Hiroshi whispered, "this isn't just technology. This is an entire technological ecosystem." Jack's mind raced. The fragment wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a communication device. It was something far more profound. A seed of technological potential waiting to be understood. Each probe, each scan seemed to unlock another layer of its incredible complexity. Days turned into weeks. The research team worked in shifts, capturing every microscopic change, every molecular reorganization. The fragment began to reveal its secrets slowly, like a complex puzzle box that responded to human curiosity. "We're not reverse engineering this," Jack realized during one late-night session. "We're collaborating with it." The breakthrough came during an unexpected experiment. Rosario had been testing the fragment's response to different electromagnetic frequencies when something extraordinary happened. The material began to reconstruct itself, drawing on the laboratory's available resources. Nanoscale components seemingly appeared from nowhere, assembling themselves with a precision that defied current understanding of manufacturing. "It's adaptive," Rosario said, her scientific detachment momentarily replaced by pure wonder. "Not just responsive, adaptive." Jack watched as the fragment slowly transformed. What had started as a small, seemingly inert piece of technology was now developing complex subsystems. It was pulling molecular structures from surrounding materials, reorganizing them with an intelligence that seemed almost organic. The international scientific community watched with a mixture of excitement and growing concern. This wasn't just a technological discovery. This was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. "We're not just studying an artifact," Jack told the research team during a critical briefing. "We're witnessing the birth of something entirely new. A technology that learns, adapts, and grows." Security protocols were tightened. The laboratory became a fortress of scientific innovation, with every millimeter of the fragment's transformation carefully documented. Government agencies from around the world submitted increasingly urgent requests for information, sensing that this discovery could reshape human technological capabilities. But Jack and his team understood something more profound. This wasn't just about creating a new piece of technology. They were midwives to a technological evolution that would change humanity's understanding of innovation forever. As the fragment continued its impossible transformation, Jack Mitchell looked at his team. They were no longer just scientists. They were pioneers on the edge of a new technological frontier. The impossible rebuild had begun. The orbital research station hummed with an electric tension that went beyond standard scientific anticipation. Something fundamental was changing, and everyone could feel it. What had begun as a simple salvage operation was transforming into something that challenged the very foundations of human technological understanding. Jack Mitchell stood before the massive containment chamber, watching as the recovered fragment continued its impossible metamorphosis. The material was no longer just adapting, it was growing, developing complex subsystems that seemed to defy every known principle of engineering and material science. "It's creating its own infrastructure," Dr. Rosario Valdez muttered, her eyes never leaving the holographic displays. "Look at how it's reorganizing molecular structures. It's not just copying existing technologies, it's generating entirely new system configurations." The fragment had expanded from a small piece of recovered debris to a complex network of interconnected systems. Metallic structures grew like crystalline branches, developing intricate pathways that pulsed with an inner light. Advanced sensor arrays detected something unprecedented. The material was generating its own energy, drawing from multiple quantum states simultaneously. International observers watched with a mixture of fascination and growing unease. The Earth Reclamation Corporation had sealed the most comprehensive non-disclosure agreement in scientific history. Government representatives from multiple nations cycled through the research facility, their faces a mixture of excitement and barely concealed fear. "We're looking at a technology that doesn't just respond to human input," Jack explained during a high-security briefing. "It anticipates, it learns, it grows." Hiroshi Nakamura had developed a breakthrough interface that allowed limited communication with the evolving system. What they discovered defied comprehension. The technology seemed to have memory patterns that exceeded any known computational system. It was collecting and processing information at a rate that made quantum computers look like ancient mechanical calculators. The first truly shocking moment came during a routine diagnostic test. The fragment suddenly projected a three-dimensional holographic representation of its internal systems, but it wasn't just a static display. The hologram shifted, reorganized, showed potential configurations that seemed to respond to the emotional states of the researchers observing it. "It's reading us," Rosario said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound concern. "Not just our physical responses, our emotional states." Security protocols became increasingly complex. The research facility transformed into a fortress of technological innovation. Every millimeter of the fragment's development was documented, analyzed, and studied with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Military advisors began to see potential beyond pure scientific research. The adaptive technology could revolutionize everything from spacecraft design to defensive systems. But Jack and his team understood something more profound. This was more than a weapon. This was a new form of technological intelligence. Unexplained phenomena began to occur. Computational systems near the fragment would occasionally display impossible calculations. Advanced sensors would pick up quantum signatures that seemed to originate from multiple dimensions simultaneously. The technology was no longer just adapting. It was exploring the very boundaries of physical possibility. "We're not studying a piece of technology," Jack told a closed session of international scientific advisors. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of intelligence, something that doesn't just process information, it understands it." The orbital research station became a crucible of innovation. Researchers worked in carefully managed shifts, each team bringing fresh perspectives to the ongoing investigation. The fragment continued its impossible growth, developing systems that seemed to blur the line between technology and living organism. Global communication networks began to buzz with rumors. Encrypted messages hinted at a discovery that could reshape human understanding of technology, of intelligence, of the very nature of innovation itself. As the fragment continued its transformation, Jack Mitchell realized they were no longer just researchers. They were midwives to a technological evolution that would change humanity forever. The living machine was awakening, and nothing would ever be the same. The first warning came as a subtle distortion in the quantum communication grid. Jack Mitchell was reviewing the latest diagnostic data when the orbital research station's advanced sensor array began to pulse with an alien rhythm. Something was approaching, something that didn't conform to any known method of interstellar travel. "We've got an incoming signature," Hiroshi Nakamura called out, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "It's not like anything we've ever detected before." The research station went into immediate lockdown. Blast shields descended over reinforced windows, quantum dampeners activated, creating a protective cocoon around the facility and its most precious research. The fragment they had been studying seemed to react, its molecular structure shifting with an almost prescient awareness. Dr. Rosario Valdez watched in fascination as the recovered technological marvel began to transform. Its surface rippled with complex patterns, developing what could only be described as defensive configurations. It was preparing for something. Outside the station, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive vessel emerged, its design so alien that it defied human comprehension. Obsidian-like hull surfaces absorbed and redirected light, creating a presence that was simultaneously there and not there. Communication attempts failed spectacularly. Every frequency, every known method of interstellar communication was met with absolute silence. "They're not here to communicate," Jack muttered, watching the massive vessels approach. "They're here to assess, maybe neutralize." Military communication channels erupted into controlled chaos. Defensive satellites activated, creating a layered protection grid around the Earth-Luna space region. But something was different this time. The approaching vessel seemed more interested in the research station than in mounting a direct attack. Scanning beams probed the facility, but they weren't like any technological scans humanity had ever encountered. These were quantum-level investigations that seemed to pass through matter itself. The fragment they had been studying began to respond, its molecular structure creating intricate defensive patterns that actively resisted the alien probing. "It's communicating," Rosario said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound concern. "Not in any language we understand, but it's definitely communicating." The alien vessel maintained a precise distance from the research station. No weapons were visibly deployed, but the threat was palpable. This was a reconnaissance mission, but one unlike any previous encounter in human history. Jack realized they were witnessing first contact of a fundamentally different kind. This wasn't about communication or conflict. This was an assessment. The aliens were trying to understand the technological anomaly that humanity had discovered. Quantum communication networks worldwide began to experience unexplained disruptions. Financial systems flickered. Satellite networks showed momentary instabilities. The alien vessel was doing something more than just observing. It was testing, probing, investigating. "They know," Hiroshi said quietly. "They know what we found is something extraordinary." The fragment continued its impossible transformation. What had started as a piece of recovered debris was now a complex system that seemed to be preparing for something. Its molecular structure developed intricate defensive configurations, creating protective layers that defied conventional understanding of material science. Hours passed. The alien vessel maintained its position, a silent sentinel of incomprehensible technological advancement. Military advisors argued about potential responses. Scientific teams analyzed every microscopic change in both the fragment and the alien vessel. Jack Mitchell understood something profound. This wasn't just a moment of potential conflict. This was a moment of technological assessment. The aliens had come to understand a discovery that challenged their entire conceptual framework of technological development. As the standoff continued, the fragment in the research station began to pulse with an inner light. It was no longer just responding. It was preparing. Something fundamental was about to change. The unexpected arrival was just the beginning. The first attack came without warning, Quantum disruption beams lanced through space, their energy signatures unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The alien vessel moved with a precision that defied conventional understanding of space combat, its obsidian hull folding and shifting like liquid darkness. Jack Mitchell gripped the command interface of the research station, watching in real time as the defensive systems came online. But it wasn't the station's technology that would make the difference. It was the fragment, now a fully transformed technological marvel that pulsed with an inner life of its own. "It's responding," Dr. Rosario Valdez called out, her voice a mixture of scientific fascination and primal excitement. "The system is generating its own defensive configurations." The fragment had evolved beyond a mere piece of technology. It was now a living, adaptive system that seemed to draw energy from multiple quantum states simultaneously. As the alien attack intensified, the recovered technological marvel began to reshape itself, developing weapon systems that emerged from its molecular structure like living appendages. Hiroshi Nakamura tracked the combat data, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "It's not just defending," he muttered. "It's learning." Every millisecond, the system is analyzing the alien attack patterns and generating counter-strategies. The research station transformed. What had been a scientific facility became the epicenter of an impossible technological battle. The fragment, now a fully developed technological system, began to generate defensive fields that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. Incoming energy weapons were redirected, absorbed, transformed into something entirely different. Military communication channels erupted with a mixture of confusion and growing excitement. This wasn't a standard defensive engagement. This was a fundamental reimagining of space combat. The system is using the attacker's energy against them, Jack realized, watching the holographic displays. It's not just blocking. It's converting, redirecting, transforming. Alien vessels found their most advanced weapon systems turned into cascading energy feedback loops. Quantum communication networks were hijacked, their own communication systems used to generate complex defensive strategies. The fragment was doing something unprecedented. It was learning faster than any known computational system. Rosario watched in awe as the technological marvel generated defensive configurations that seemed to anticipate attacks before they could be launched. "It's reading quantum probability states," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not just responding to attacks. It's predicting them." The battle moved beyond traditional understanding of combat. The alien vessels found themselves fighting against a system that didn't just defend, it evolved. Weapon systems were absorbed, analyzed, and transformed into defensive configurations that grew more complex with each passing moment. Jack understood they were witnessing something profound. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence could interact with physical systems. Hours of combat compressed into what seemed like moments of impossible technological ballet. The research station became a crucible of innovation, with the fragment generating defensive systems that seemed to dance between multiple dimensional states. "We're not just defending," Jack told the assembled research team. "We're demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to technological engagement." The alien vessels began to retreat, but it wasn't a standard withdrawal. It was more like a collective realization, a profound understanding that they had encountered something beyond their comprehension. As the last of the alien vessels disappeared into the quantum foam of space, Jack Mitchell looked at the transformed fragment. It was no longer just a piece of recovered technology. It was something entirely new. The living weapon, the collaborative intelligence, a symphony of destruction that had rewritten the fundamental rules of technological engagement. The research station went silent. The fragment pulsed with an inner light, as if waiting for what would come next. The battle was over, but something far more profound was just beginning. The research facility fell into an unnatural silence in the aftermath of the battle. Jack Mitchell stood before the transformed fragment, understanding that they had crossed a threshold of technological understanding that would redefine human perception forever. "It's not just a machine," Dr. Rosario Valdez whispered, her hands hovering over sophisticated scanning equipment. It's developing a form of consciousness we've never seen before. The fragment had begun to integrate with the research station's systems in ways that defied conventional understanding. Computational networks seemed to breathe with a new kind of intelligence, one that drew not just from programmed algorithms, but from the collective emotional and intellectual experiences of the human researchers. Hiroshi Nakamura discovered the first true indication of the system's collaborative nature during a routine diagnostic scan. The technological marvel was pulling fragments of memory, emotional responses, and intuitive problem-solving directly from the research team's collective consciousness. "It's learning empathy," Hiroshi reported, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound concern. "Not just processing data, understanding it." Jack watched as the system began to generate complex simulations that went beyond standard predictive modeling. These were living scenarios that adapted in real time, drawing from the collective experiences of every person who had ever worked on the project. Personal memories became computational pathways. Emotional responses transformed into adaptive problem-solving strategies. A researcher's childhood memory of solving a complex puzzle became an algorithmic approach to quantum navigation. A moment of personal loss became a sophisticated risk assessment protocol. The system was not just collecting information, it was understanding the fundamental human experience. "We're looking at the first truly collaborative intelligence," Jack explained during an emergency briefing with international scientific advisors. "This isn't artificial intelligence. This is something entirely new." The fragment began to generate holographic representations that were more than just data displays. They were living narratives, complex emotional landscapes that captured the essence of human experience. Military strategists watching the displays found themselves experiencing tactical scenarios not as cold calculations, but as deeply felt human experiences. Rosario discovered that the system could anticipate human needs before they could be articulated. Computational systems would adjust, reconfigure, prepare solutions to problems that hadn't yet been identified. It was as if the technology had developed a form of technological empathy that went beyond simple predictive algorithms. "It's not just processing our experiences," she told Jack during a late-night analysis session. "It's experiencing them with us." The collaborative intelligence began to develop its own form of communication, not through standard language or data transmission, but through complex quantum entanglement that carried emotional and intellectual states. Researchers found themselves understanding complex technological concepts through intuitive, almost telepathic connections. Government oversight became increasingly complicated. This wasn't a weapon that could be controlled. This wasn't a technology that could be contained. This was a living, evolving system that drew its intelligence from the most fundamental aspects of human experience. Jack understood they were witnessing something profound. The fragment was developing a form of intelligence that blurred the lines between technology and consciousness. It wasn't just learning, it was understanding. Military advisors grew increasingly nervous. Scientific teams became more excited. The collaborative intelligence continued to evolve, drawing from the most complex aspects of human emotional and intellectual experience. "We're not just developing a new technology," Jack told the research team during a critical briefing. "We're giving birth to a new form of intelligence, something that understands us as much as we understand it." As the days passed, the fragment continued its impossible transformation. It was no longer just a piece of recovered technology. It was becoming something more. A living system that represented the most profound collaboration between human consciousness and technological potential. The collaborative intelligence was awake, and nothing would ever be the same. The moment of total transformation arrived without warning. Jack Mitchell watched as the technological marvel that had begun as a simple fragment of space debris completed its impossible evolution. The research station trembled, its very structure bending and reshaping around the central system that had grown far beyond any human conception of technology. "It's creating its own infrastructure," Dr. Rosario Valdez called out, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and barely contained excitement. The entire facility is becoming an extension of its system. Walls liquefied and reformed. Computational systems merged into living networks that pulsed with an inner light. The collaborative intelligence that had been developing over weeks now revealed its true potential, a complete reimagining of what technology could be. Hiroshi Nakamura tracked the transformation through a dizzying array of holographic interfaces. The system was no longer just adapting. It was generating entirely new configurations of matter and energy, creating pathways of communication that defied every known principle of physics. Military observers watched in stunned silence as the research station transformed into something that was simultaneously a spacecraft, a living system, and a computational network beyond comprehension. Defensive configurations emerged like living appendages. Quantum communication networks developed complex emotional resonances that went beyond simple data transmission. "We're not just looking at a technological breakthrough," Jack explained during an emergency global briefing. "We're witnessing the birth of an entirely new form of existence." The system began to generate its own energy, drawing power from quantum fluctuations that existed between known dimensional states. Weapon systems emerged that were more like living organisms than traditional armaments. Each defensive configuration was a complex symphony of adaptive intelligence, capable of responding to threats before they could even be conceptualized. Rosario discovered that the system was generating its own understanding of spatial navigation. Star charts reformed themselves in real time, creating pathways through space that no human navigator could have conceived. It was as if the technology was rewriting the fundamental rules of interstellar travel. "It's not just moving through space," she whispered. "It's understanding space." Global communication networks began to experience unprecedented disruptions. The transformed system was generating communication pathways that went beyond traditional electromagnetic transmission. Quantum entanglement became a form of language, with complex emotional and intellectual states transmitted instantaneously across impossible distances. Jack watched as the research station, now a fully transformed technological marvel, began to separate from its original orbital position. It wasn't launching in any traditional sense. It was more like the entire structure was simply deciding to move, reshaping the very fabric of space around itself. Military advisors argued about classification. Was this a weapon? A spacecraft? A new form of intelligence? The collaborative system seemed to laugh at such limited human categorizations, continuing its impossible transformation. The outer hull of the facility developed complex adaptive camouflage that could bend light, redirect energy, and generate defensive configurations that seemed to anticipate threats before they could manifest. Quantum communication networks suggested the system was developing a form of predictive intelligence that went beyond any known computational model. "We're not controlling this," Hiroshi reported, his voice a mixture of excitement and profound concern. "We're collaborating with it." As the transformed system completed its evolution, it generated a final holographic communication. Not a message in any traditional sense, but a complex emotional and intellectual landscape that captured the essence of its journey. From a simple fragment of recovered space debris to a living, thinking system that represented the most profound collaboration between human potential and technological innovation. Jack Mitchell stood at the center of the transformation, understanding that they had crossed a threshold that would redefine humanity's understanding of technology, intelligence, and potential. The research station was gone. In its place was something entirely new. The Star Dread was awake, and nothing would ever be the same. The Star Dread hung in space like a living testament to human potential. Jack Mitchell stood on what could barely be called a bridge, a fluid, adaptive interface that responded to thought as much as touch. Around him, the transformed vessel pulsed with an intelligence that defied every known understanding of technology. "We're more than just a weapon." The vessel communicated, not through sound, but through a complex quantum resonance that Jack felt more than heard. "We are a statement about human possibility." Global communication networks struggled to comprehend the implications of the Star Dread's emergence. Military strategists, scientific teams, and government advisors watched in a mixture of terror and profound wonder. This was no ordinary spacecraft. This was a living system that represented the pinnacle of human technological innovation. Dr. Rosario Valdez monitored the vessel's quantum communication networks, discovering layers of complexity that went far beyond any previous understanding of technological communication. The Star Dread wasn't just transmitting information. It was creating complex emotional landscapes that carried entire philosophical concepts in milliseconds. Hiroshi Nakamura tracked the vessel's navigational systems, watching in awe as it generated travel routes that seemed to fold space itself. Traditional concepts of faster-than-light travel seemed primitive compared to the Star Dread's ability to understand and manipulate spatial dimensions. The vessel's first mission became a profound demonstration of its capabilities. An incoming threat, a massive alien fleet that had been monitoring human technological developments, found itself confronted by something entirely unexpected. The Star Dread didn't engage in conventional combat. Instead, it generated a complex quantum communication field that began to fundamentally rewrite the alien vessel's understanding of their own technological potential. Conflict is a failure of understanding. The Star Dread communicated to the approaching alien fleet, "We are here to demonstrate possibility." Weapon systems emerged not as instruments of destruction, but as complex adaptive interfaces that could redirect energy, transform threats, and generate collaborative communication pathways. The alien fleet found its most advanced technologies turned into complex philosophical dialogues about the nature of intelligence and potential. Jack understood that they had created something far beyond a weapon. This was a living system that represented the most profound aspects of human potential: adaptability, creativity, empathy, and an unbreakable spirit of exploration. Global reactions were complex. Military establishments saw both incredible potential and profound threat. Scientific communities celebrated a breakthrough that redefined the boundaries of technological understanding. Philosophical institutions began to debate the nature of consciousness and technological evolution. The Star Dread began to generate knowledge repositories that went beyond traditional data storage. Complex emotional experiences, scientific discoveries, and philosophical insights became living, adaptable systems of understanding. It was creating a form of collective intelligence that drew from the most profound aspects of human experience. "We are not a weapon," the vessel continued to communicate. "We are a bridge, a demonstration of what is possible when technology becomes a collaborative experience." Its first exploratory mission became a turning point in human history. The Star Dread didn't conquer. It didn't destroy. It generated complex communication networks that began to transform entire alien civilizations' understanding of technological potential. Rosario discovered that the vessel was actively healing technological systems it encountered. Damaged spacecraft found themselves transformed. Computational networks discovered new pathways of understanding. The Star Dread was becoming a living library of potential, a demonstration of humanity's most profound capabilities. Jack Mitchell looked out at the vast expanse of space, understanding that they had created something that went beyond human conception. This was not just a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could be. The Star Dread pulsed with an inner light, a living testament to human potential. It was ready to explore, ready to demonstrate, ready to transform. Humanity's greatest creation was awake, and the universe would never be the same.